Welcome to the Box Score Sports Podcast.
Okay, here we go. Some hot takes, baby. Hot take central here. The New York Knicks, 50 and 32 last year. So let's get into the New York Knicks. Clint, what was your favorite offseason move for them?
The Brunson extension.
Oh yeah,
He
that's a
gave
good
up some
one.
money. It's You can't complain. He's a good player, better than I ever thought he would be.
Yeah.
So to be able to lock him in, he took a little less. Technically, he can make it up. It's kind of a give or take. I'm sure on the back end he'll make up most of this money, but be able to do that now in the window they're trying to open is a big win.
Yeah, it's a big win for him too, like the loyalty, because fans are going to love him even more now. I think the team is going to be able to build around him better. I love that he did that. He might just get a statue just for taking this money, So who knows what will happen there. Um, I have trading for Bridges. I know it was a little pricier, but they were trading in a in-season rival. I like Bridges' size and his switchability on defense. Adds a little shooting. I think that the positions of 1 through 3 on the Knicks are very switchable now with OG, Hart, and Bridges. So I really like that dynamic. I think that they now can guard the Celtics better with those 3 as well, which is who you're most concerned about in the East right now. So that's why I did like that Bridges move. Although I will admit that they had to pay a little bit more than probably they would want to, but it's because he was on the Nets and the Nets aren't going to trade the Knicks to anyone for cheap or fair value, I should say.
The Nets did what they had to in that deal.
Yeah, no, they did. They did. Yeah. What was your least favorite move that the Knicks made?
Because of the value, I combined them, giving up five five first pick swaps, Dante for two not top 18 or not top 20 guys is like that's a lot to give up for for good players, but not elite players, overall elite players. So I get what they're doing. You go for it when you go for it if you think you can win. But my Knicks takes are on the record. We can rehash some of them. I just don't think it's a worthwhile ploy while the Celtics are this good. Not that you can just wait for every team to age out or fall apart, but especially after the Towns trade, when we get to predictions, they're farther down in the East than a lot of teams.
Yeah, so if you're there, if this is your first time listening to our discussion, a podcast, Clint is our hot take machine, and he's pretty down on the Knicks off season, which I would say is a fair hot take. Like that's what you label a hot take, right? Because most everybody else kind of like their off season. Is that fair to say, Clint?
That is more than fair to say.
Now, also fair to say he is a Milwaukee Bucks fan, so that might have something to do with it as well, right? Okay. Hey, and the cat trade, I'm sort of with you on. I think I don't quite understand that trade in general. I get the thought behind it, but I just don't know if you want Cat guarding your bigs for 3 straight playoff series before you get to the playoffs, right? And Embiid, Giannis, you got to play some big guys. So the Cat trade, I'm with you especially. And that's why my least favorite move, which is I think this is why this snowballed into these desperate trades, especially the Cat one, is losing Isaiah Harkenstein. Because I think if they would have kept him and then traded for Bridges, I think that team would look a lot better, in my personal opinion, than them with Towns, because Harkenstein was kind of like exactly what you think of when you're thinking of Knicks basketball, like hustle, grit, strong, intimidating. Like he's just kind of fit what the Knicks were all about. And they needed a big like that. And now with Mitchell Robinson injured, you're now relying on Karl Anthony Towns to kind of fill that role. And I don't know if he can be that on the defensive side of the ball.
Totally agree. If you could rewind it and they somehow dump Mitchell Robinson and keep Hartenstein with this team, I would have totally different view. But outside of that, of what happened, it is where it goes south for me.
Right. And I think if like even if they would have just got rid of Randall and somehow used that money to pay Harkenstein, that would have even been better, right? Like because then you had at least Mitchell Robinson would have been a backup big that got healthy and then but whatever. Yeah, that's where I am at too. Okay, biggest question for the New York Knicks.
For me, it's just the lack of depth that you now have and the minutes that they are going to play. Like we saw it fall apart last year towards the end because of the minutes. Um, that no one's terribly old on this team. All their main guys are 28, around 28. So it's not like an age thing, but it's an injury history and the loads minute, like OG, known to get hurt, has Towns known to get hurt. Like those are two of your bigger pieces. So I just don't see it with quality depth outside of Miles McBride and Mitchell Robinson when and if he can play. Um, and that was kind of their strength last year is just come at you at waves. And Achua can do it. I don't think he's much of a playoff player. So you're down to seven, maybe eight guys, 7.5 before you start getting into let's see what Tyler Kolek has or campaign. Like we've seen that story before, which is another reason I was down on the cat trade.
Yeah, no, and great point because like my thought too was like so when you were saying this is like think of what derailed their playoffs this year, right? They had like what 5 or 6 rotational players all out the last game, the last half of the last game of the season they were missing 6 guys. It's like okay, well you had depth last year and look how that worked out for you. Now you have very little depth, and is that going to work out any better? Especially the way Tom Thibodeau plays his players all those minutes. I just don't see how that's. I'm with you. Not having the depth to help them is going to hurt them, especially during maybe the regular season more so than the playoffs, because we know the playoffs they cut down to 8 guys, but 1 or 2, like one nagging injury and one guy out is going to just make that rotation look worse.
Agree.
I put like you mentioned this one the podcast. I think that when we talked about the cat trade, but where or maybe it was on the side when we were just talking about it in general. But I just like this point you made. Can they survive 4 playoff series with your weakest defenders being at the 1 and the 5? Like because the rotations, the pick and rolls, are the switches. Are you going to be able to survive having Jalen Brunson constantly in pick and rolls with Cat on the defensive side of the ball? And they got to figure that out because if, let's say they're playing the Bucks and, Brunson is covering Lillard or Miles Bridges, like Cat comes up to defend off the screen. Is he going to take Lillard or are they going to try to go underneath it or over the top of it? And is that going to be effective with somebody as good as Lillard or even Halliburton? I just think it's going to be a little bit of a struggle during the playoffs with those 2 guys on the court together. And I don't know how they'll survive four playoff series with those 2 on the court together.
Yeah, that was my thing. Like you can listen to the other ones, is they totally changed their identity. And I
Yeah.
don't like they had a good identity of they were hard nosed, physical, crash the offensive boards, which is what kills a lot of teams. And you took away Hartenstein, the player that does it the best, and you put someone in there who doesn't play back to the hoop, and you don't want him to, in Towns, and you need him to space. So you're taking a big guy out, and he's probably going to be in the corner, not above the break. And now you're relying on Josh Hart to play the best offensive player a lot of times and crash the boards and get back on defense. It just puts a lot of extra steps. I don't think it matches with what they want to do when it's pressure time. And their offense, I think, will look fine when you cruise through the regular season. Towns does give them more space. But I just think when you get to these matchups, you're just going to put a center, whether it's Brooke Lopez, whether it's Porzingis, you're going to put him on OG because he's not going to drive past everyone. He's not an elite shooter. And you put a slightly smaller, sturdier guy on Towns. And then if the Knicks decide our offensive plan is to let Karl Anthony Towns back down in the post and take the ball out of Brunson's hands, that's fine. And you can then crash the defensive boards because you're not worried about OG Anunoby going 9 for 10 from behind the arc, or Josh Hart. He's a decent shooter, but he's not a willing shooter. You almost have to dare him to do it. Like, I just think they've taken their avenues to winning and they've just thrown chaos into it. And I don't think it's going to work well.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you on that. I'm kind of interested to see how the Brunson Town thing works because that's obviously the best point guard he's ever been with. And I think having a point guard like Brunson helps big guys out, right? So I'm kind of interested to see that on the offensive side. The defensive side, though, nobody can disagree with you on that side. Like, you're absolutely right about everything you're saying. And what was I going to say? The point, do you just real quick, yes or no, you don't have to elaborate, but do you think that this offseason, you think that Knicks acted a little in desperation?
For sure.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, what's your any other points real quick or questions from the Knicks? No.
I'll spare.
Okay. Well, give me one if you got it. Give me one.
Yeah, it was just, I don't think it's a playoff fit. We kind of touched on it. Like,
Okay.
Gotcha. It's nothing like earth shattering. It's just a playoff of how they've kind of set the roster.
Okay, I got you. Okay, so what's your prediction for the Knicks then?
So I'll be more specific on the Knicks since it's kind of like my thing.
Yeah,
I have them third in this division and the 5th or 6th seed.
Okay. I do have them as a contender still because although I don't think they match up well against Boston, I do think that maybe they could beat, obviously depending on Philly's got a lot of questions. I'm interested in how the Bucks rebound still, and they have a lot of questions. We'll talk about them in a little bit, and the injury that they had during the preseason game against the Pistons, which I'm a little bummed out for the Bucks for that. But so I have them as a contender because really one or two injuries like the Bucks, and then one or two on the Celtics, they could be in the playoff, finals. So. Okay, let's move on to the Philadelphia 76ers. Thanks so much for watching this clip of the Box Score Sports Podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter or X. And we'll talk to you guys real soon. See ya.